Hey, everybody. Coach Tim here from BioTRUST Nutrition, and today we are talking GLP-1s. I'm doing a quick sound check here, so I can see it looks like my microphone is working. Can you let me know in the chat if you can hear me okay? Uh, very excited to have you all here today as we talk about this super hot topic in the world of nutrition and weight loss and fitness and all things. So excited to get going here with you today. So if you guys can just let me know here in the chat that you can hear me, that you can see me, and that we're good to go, we'll get started here. So like I said, today we're talking about GLP-1s. We got a lot of ground to cover. It's going to be a lot of fun. Yep, Andrea says yep, and that's awesome. Thanks, Andrea. Guys, as you come in today, let me know you're here. Say, hey, I'm here. Let me know where you're coming in from. I'd love to say hello to you. Let's see, Dre's in the house. Hey, Dre. I'm looking forward to this too. This has been a long time coming. So excited that we have this opportunity to talk GLP-1s today. We're going to get into a little bit of semantics. We're going to get into a lot of things. Let's see. Hey, Andrea from Pennsylvania. Awesome. Sunny in Arkansas. Love to hear that, Jane. It is a sunny day here in Austin, Texas as well. And Sandy, thank you so much. You can see me. You can hear me. Awesome, guys. Thank you so much. It's even us coaches need encouragement. So we're going to encourage you on your way, but this early encouragement for me is super helpful. Thank you so much. Hey, Paula. Glad to have you here. Glad to have you here. Gonna make sure we can see on the camera and everything and get it going. So let's kind of lay the foundation here. So we're talking about GLP-1s. I'm gonna get into what that means. Sure, you guys are familiar with that, particularly as it relates to weight loss. But we're gonna talk about GLP-1s. Why is everyone talking about GLP-1s? What are they? How do they work? How do they affect the body? What are some of the unintended consequences of GLP-1s? Hello, Dana. Good to see you. Good afternoon to you. And if you are using GLP-1s, what other concerns or things should you be thinking about? Are there certain support supplements, certain nutritional factors that you should be taking into consideration if you're already there? If you're on the fence about taking GLP-1s, what should you be thinking about? And along those lines, are there effective alternatives? So we're going to get into all this today and probably quite a bit more. So again, thank you guys for being here. I do need to start off with a little bit of a disclaimer. I am Coach Tim from BioTRUST Nutrition. My good friend, Coach Cristina, is in the audience taking questions and helping out with comments, things like that. Hello, Selma. Good to see you here from Oklahoma City. Glad to have you here. I'm from Austin, Texas. Hope you don't mind. I know there's the old Red River rivalry, so don't take it personally. We're on the same team today. So Coach Christina's in the audience. I'll be here talking about GLP-1s and all the questions that we have going on. And again, like I said, an important disclaimer. Listen, I'm Coach Tim. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not medically trained. I don't play one on TV or YouTube Live for that matter. And what we're talking about today is meant to be for informational purposes only. It's not meant to be construed or misconstrued as medical advice or a substitute thereof. So as always, please consult with a physician, a qualified healthcare practitioner before starting or discontinuing any medications, before beginning a new exercise routine, before changing your diet, adding any supplements. This is particularly true if you have a medical condition, if you're being treated for medical condition, you're at risk for medical conditions. Okay. So just want to get that out of the way. I'll probably repeat that throughout, so bear with me, but just want to make sure you know who you're talking to here, or who you're listening to. Now, having said that, I do consider myself to be an expert in this area of dietary supplements, exercise, nutrition, wellness, and certainly on this topic, learning as much as I can to help folks out like you. And everything that I'm saying today is based on practical experience, the research published on PubMed. I'll have a list of references that I can share here in the comments as well, that everything that we're saying today is based on documented research and the evidence that's out there, okay, as well as some of my personal experiences in this area. Hello, Charlene. Good to see you. And from San Antonio. Thank you, Selma. Whew, goodness. Appreciate you clarifying there. So just down the road. Okay. So GLP-1s, right? GLP-1, easily one of the hottest topics easily the hottest topic in weight loss, but probably even one of the hottest topics in wellness, nutrition, fitness, and everything. Research reports that 1 in 8 US adults, that's 12% of the adult population, has at least tried a GLP-1, right? So that's a lot of people. Hello, Brenda. Good to see you here from Georgia. All right. So, and research is showing that. So, not only do we have 12%, hello, Sandy from Lafayette, Louisiana. Not only we have 12% of the adult population who's already tried GLP-1s or currently using, that's just expected to grow. Albert from Texas, good to see you. I'm going to give you a hook 'em horns. Hopefully, they don't take offense to that. So that's only going to grow. So this is a very relevant topic to obviously to you guys, but hopefully to others out there as well. So feel free to share this presentation or this live Q&A as we go. Okay, so a lot of people using GLP-1s, even more expected to over the next several years. It's a very popular topic. So what is GLP-1? Okay, now GLP-1 is the acronym for a hormone in the body called Glucagon-Like Peptide-1. So this is a hormone that's actually produced in the body. It's produced by the L cells in the gut, typically in response to food intake. And what GLP-1 does, its primary function is to tell the pancreas to produce insulin and to stop producing glucagon. And what that adds up to, the outcome of that is to control blood sugar. So the primary one of the primary functions of GLP-1 in the body, this hormone in the body, is to control blood sugar levels. Okay, so we're going to get into that a little bit more. Hello, Melody from West Virginia. So that's the outcome is to regulate blood glucose levels. And because GLP-1 plays such an important role in the regulation of blood glucose levels, pharmaceutical companies took it upon themselves to, as a path to develop these GLP-1 drugs, which we'll get into in just a moment, to help control blood sugar levels in type 2 diabetics. So that was the impetus, now more than a decade ago, probably closer to 2 decades ago, for the development of these GLP-1 drugs. Now, a lesson in semantics here. When we're talking about GLP-1s today, what we're actually referring to is a category of medications, now known as a category of anti-obesity medications, but a category of medications known as GLP-1 receptor agonists. So it's the technical abbreviation of what we're talking about today is GLP-1RA. And that is because these medications are not GLP-1 themselves, but compounds that look similar to GLP-1 in the body and can interact with the GLP-1 receptor in the body. Okay, so we're going to just call them, just simply put, like GLP-1s or GLP-1 drugs, GLP-1 medications, things like that. But just know that from a semantic standpoint, these are actually GLP-1 receptor agonists. Okay, GLP-1 RAs. So just a little bit of education there. It's pretty interesting. But we're so GLP-1s. Okay. Now let's see. So when GLP-1s like I said, GLP-1s were originally developed to help control blood sugar levels. And when these, long clinical trials were carried out, these multiple stages of clinical trials to get drug approval were carried out, what the researchers were finding that not only were they effective at regulating and lowering blood sugar levels in type 2 diabetics, but they were also very effective or meaningfully effective in reducing body weight in people who weren't necessarily even trying to lose weight. In fact, and if we look at like the Sustain or the Pioneer trials, we see an average of somewhere around like 5 to 6% weight loss over the course of about a year in many of the participants. 5 to 6% may not seem like a ton, but it's clinically meaningful. And generally speaking, from a weight loss standpoint, from a medical perspective, 5 to 10% is really the ultimate goal in many cases. When we see weight loss in the areas of 5 to 10% from a health standpoint, we see significant improvements in various metrics of cardiometabolic health, whether that's cholesterol, blood pressure, triglycerides, insulin, blood sugar, so on and so forth. But we also see significant reductions in the risks for various chronic health conditions, whether that's cancer, diabetes, heart disease, things like that. Okay, so again, originally these GLP-1s designed to help control blood sugar levels. A side effect, which we're going to get into more side effects here in just a moment, a side effect is weight loss. Okay, so that's what researchers were seeing. All right. And that's why they're more commonly used today, right? So we've got 1 in 8 US adults using these drugs, many of whom are not using them for the purpose of that type 2 or controlling diabetes, but rather for weight loss. Like I said, 12% of the US population has at least tried these, and that's a number that's expected to grow over the next several years. Now, how do GLP-1s work? I talked to you already about how they work from a type 2 diabetic or blood glucose management standpoint, but how do they work from a weight loss standpoint? This is what we're really going to focus on today is that GLP-1s for weight management. Thank you, CP, for uh, sharing that medical disclaimer. I did say that at the beginning, but Coach Christina did a great job of putting that in the chat. Basically, what I said, not medical advice, just information to do our best to help you. Okay. All right. So when it comes to weight loss, how do GLP-1s work? Hey, Earl, good to see you here from New Jersey. There's a number of different mechanisms that you can identify, at least like 5 or 6 different mechanisms. So one, they slow down the transit time through the gut. So things just move slower. And this is why we see some of the side effects that we do, which we'll get into momentarily. But it slows down the process of how food moves through the stomach. Okay. That's one. But really what we like to see, what we really see happening is that GLP-1 is a satiety hormone. Okay. So not only does it have this effect on insulin and glucagon to control blood glucose levels. Hello, Marie. Good to see you here. It also is a satiety hormone. What that means is it reduces hunger, it reduces appetite, it reduces food cravings, and it increases feelings of fullness, the satiety after eating. It also affects food preferences and eating preferences. In particular, what we see is that GLP-1s reduce the preference for fatty, high calorie foods. Okay, so we see all these things: reduced food cravings, changing in eating preferences, reduced hunger, and increased satiety. All that adds up to reduced caloric intake. Okay, reduced caloric intake. And we know just from a very fundamental standpoint that in order to lose weight, we have to basically burn more calories than we consume. We can either increase our metabolic rate through things like exercise, thermogenics, what have you, or decrease food intake. And so we know that both of those levers are hard to pull, and the food intake piece is especially hard to pull. But GLP-1s are particularly effective at pulling that lever on the food intake side. In fact, we see studies on GLP-1s. Again, there's a mixed bag here. I'm going to get into this in just a moment. On the type of people that are using these, you have some people using them for blood glucose and some people using them for weight management. So that's why you'll see such a wide variety in some of the statistics I'm going to share with you. But in general, studies report that people's food intake decreases by somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 to 35% when using GLP-1s. It's pretty substantial, and that adds up to somewhere in the neighborhood of, like, say, 400 to 700 calories reduced per day. In theory, we say that there's about 3,500 calories in a pound of fat. So you can see that this is going to add up to some weight loss over time. And it can be very meaningful. Sometimes we see some studies report even a reduction in caloric intake of like 1,200 calories a day. So there's a large standard deviation. And part of this is, in my opinion, the reason that people are using it. Again, if someone's using GLP-1s for blood glucose management, they may not be as emphasized, placing as much of an emphasis on the weight loss piece, and it's just a side effect. But some people are using it for weight management purposes specifically, and they might be combining it with a healthy lifestyle. Indeed, when we see GLP-1s combined with a healthy lifestyle, or lifestyle interventions, I should say, things like exercise, healthy eating, so on and so forth, we generally see better results. In fact, in the type 2 diabetic population, the weight loss averages are somewhere in like 5 to 6% over the course of these trials. Can range, that's another variable here, from 16 weeks to 72 weeks, but let's say on average a year, 5 to 6% weight loss. In populations that are a little bit more focused on weight loss, we see average weight loss in the neighborhood of 6 to 17%. So this is not, 17% is not chopped liver. That's a huge amount of weight loss in a year or so. To put it in perspective, we can put some numbers to it, which I'll do that momentarily. But let's do it right now. Imagine that you're starting at 200 pounds, and a year later you've dropped over 30 pounds. I mean, that sounds amazing, right? It's like your weight loss dreams have come true. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows. And that's what we want to get to here. So what are some of the side effects? What are some of the downsides of these GLP-1s? Before I get there, again, I want to say hello to everybody. Coach Tim from BioTRUST, Coach Christina's in the audience. Listen, guys, we're not doctors. We're not providing medical advice, but we're talking about a very relevant and important topic. We want to talk about these GLP-1s, how they work, what they can do if you're using one, or if you're thinking about using one, what type of support do you need? Um, and what are some of the considerations? Are there alternatives? Should you be taking some things to help combat some of the side effects that we're about to get into, and so on and so forth? Chris, great question. Is GLP-1 the same as what Wegovy is advertised on TV? Yeah. So Chris, great question, or Christopher, great question there. So when kind of leading into this, what I do want to make clear is that GLP-1 is a hormone that is naturally produced in the body, generally produced in response to food intake. And its primary function, like I said, is to control blood sugar. But to kind of get to the crux of your question, Chris, Wegovy is one of several GLP-1 receptor agonists. Now, in this little talk or presentation today, what I'm using GLP-1s interchangeably with GLP-1 receptor agonists. So when I'm talking about GLP-1 medications and drugs and things like that, Wegovy is one such GLP-1. But just keep in mind, it's not actually the hormone itself, but it's a receptor agonist. So I don't want to get too thick in the weeds, but I also want to be accurate here. Hey, Jeff from Tucson. And yeah, your doctor wants you to go on Wegovy lecture perfectly. Awesome. Glad to have you here, Jeff. Like I said, these GLP-1s or these GLP-1 receptor agonists are markedly effective when it comes to both blood sugar management and weight management. But as we're about to get into, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Now, I don't mean to say that as being scary, but actually, like, if this is something that you're interested in, something that you're using, how can you optimize your use of it? Okay. So side effects. There's many reported side effects. The most commonly reported side effects have to related to digestive issues, gut issues, things like that. In particular, nausea. Nausea is the most commonly expressed side effect among users. In fact, 1 in 2, 50% of users on average report some nausea. In addition, we have things like vomiting, heartburn, diarrhea, even constipation, various digestive related issues. The studies generally suggest that these side effects are more prominent early on and tend to dissipate over time. And that's been my experience as well with folks that have used them. But again, to be honest with you, if I had to guess, I would have to say that, like, nausea probably is one of the mechanisms of action here, right? Like, if you're nauseous, it's unlikely that you're going to eat, and if you are unlikely to eat, you're going to reduce your caloric intake. It's ironic, but we actually see some of the similar types of effects with something like apple cider vinegar. I'm not comparing GLP-1s to apple cider vinegar. Please don't take that out of context. But one of the mechanisms of action for apple cider vinegar in terms of weight loss is actually a nauseating effect that precludes you from eating. So I think that nausea might actually be one of the early contributing factors. But still, like I said, there's multiple mechanisms here. GLP-1 is a satiety or anti-hunger hormone, and it's these GLP-1 receptor agonists work markedly effective at reducing food cravings, reducing appetite, reducing preferences for high-calorie fatty foods, and increasing satiety. In fact, one of the other side effects that we see is related to hydration, and some people the effect on satiety and anti-hunger is so strong in some people with these GLP-1 receptor agonists that they don't even want to drink water. Now, that's a problem, right? So that's a nutrient deficiency, a significant nutrient deficiency, a gap that you must fill. I think that this is where something like a BioTRUST Mojo H2O might be a useful tool in the toolbox, because it's something that you can add to water to make it a little bit more palatable and improve the hydrating effects of the water. And let's see, we've got a couple comments here. Delia says, my daughter currently takes Metabo Boost. Is it okay to take this along with GLP-1? It's a great question, Delia. If I'm saying that wrong, I apologize. We'll get into that in just a moment. So if you're taking any medications, talk with your doctor. I think it could be a useful tool for a number of reasons that I'll get into here in just a moment, because I do have some concerns about some of the side effects. One, I'm going to hammer. I'm going to beat a drum really loud on this one in just a moment. So hang tight with me. Jane said, one woman on YouTube said she quit using it because it made food so unappealing that she cannot enjoy eating. Yeah, and gotten all skeletal. You're banging a drum that I'm about to really pound on, Jane. Thank you for mentioning that, because it's Jeff. You just started on Metabo Boost. Awesome. I think it's a great tool in the toolbox. I'm going to get into that here in just a moment. So let's get into more of these side effects. So I talked about the gut and digestive issues. I do think there's potentially some beneficial supplements that can help there. I'll get into that. Nutrition gaps. So whenever you're eating less, like Jane, you talked about, you're going to be getting less micronutrients, less macronutrients. One macronutrient important in particular that I'm especially concerned about, that I'm going to really unpack here in just a moment. But a multivitamin is probably more important now with the GLP-1 than ever before, because you're just not getting enough nutrition from food. And I think that, Jane, I'm not going to speak to the lack of enjoyment too much of food, but it's such an important piece of the puzzle that I'm glad that you mentioned it. So it is a side effect that I'm not going to mention today, but I'm glad that you did. In addition, some other things that we see as reported side effects: low energy, fatigue. We hear about mood swings and emotional disturbances, sleep disturbances such as insomnia, and hydration. Dry mouth also are some issues that we're hearing about with GLP-1s. Now, one that I really want to dig into, and Jane, you've already kind of alluded to this, Delia and Jeff, this is also relevant to you guys, is muscle loss. Okay, so all sunshine and rainbows. I lost 30 pounds. Great. No, not so much. So what is the quality of the weight loss that we're seeing with GLP-1s? Dude, check this out. So studies report that 40 to 60% of the weight loss with GLP-1s is not fat mass, lean mass. So not fat. Like literally half the weight you're losing is not fat. And now those things can vary considerably from study to study, but on average, we're seeing like an average of 40 to 60%. So what is fat-free mass, or what is lean mass? So this encompasses a number of different tissues in the body. It can be organs, it can be bone, it can be water, and it can be other fluids. And it's also skeletal muscle mass. Okay, so a big chunk of this, let's call it 40% of not fat of fat-free mass that we're losing, is muscle mass. Now, most of you heard me talk about age-related muscle loss and why this is so important. I'm going to hit it again hard right now, okay? Because this is a real deal. This is a big time concern. Muscle loss on these GLP-1s, okay? So I'm gonna just read an example here that I put together. So to put this into perspective, let's say that you go on a GLP-1 for a year, you drop 20 to 30 pounds. That's 10 to 15% of your starting weight. Man, good for you, right? That's awesome. Like, I'm just looking at numbers on the scale. I'm looking at numbers that the doctor's telling me. Awesome. Now, conservatively speaking, let's say that 25% of that muscle mass, 25% of that weight loss is muscle mass. That's a very real possibility. That means like 5 to 8-ish pounds that you've lost is muscle. Now, that may not seem like a big deal, but let's look at it a slightly different way, okay? A slightly different perspective, because it's a huge problem, is that if you've heard me talk about age-related muscle loss, you've heard me say that we lose on average 3 to 8% of our muscle mass each decade after the age of 30, okay? It's a big problem, has far-reaching implications on your metabolism, your strength, your quality of life, your balance, muscle function, mobility, all of these things, okay? But I want to point out the age-related muscle loss for a reason. When a quarter of the weight that you lose on GLP-1s is muscle mass, it's basically the equivalent of a decade's worth of age-related muscle loss. So let me say that again. If you're losing a quarter of the weight that you're losing on GLP-1s in 1 year is muscle mass, that's basically like shaving off a decade of your life in terms of muscle mass, okay? That's a big deal, right? In the short term, this goes back to something Jane says. if that doesn't really make sense to you, that age-related muscle loss, the decades worth of muscle lost in a year with GLP-1s, if that doesn't make sense to you, then maybe I can put it this way. In the short term, if you're losing that much muscle as you're losing weight, you're basically going to look skinny fat. Okay. You're going to look skinny fat. And I'm sure that many of you have seen this. It's like, whether it's the Ozempic butt or it's like just this gaunt, skeletal looking, as Jane says, it just, it's not good from that standpoint, right? It just doesn't look right when you're skinny fat. It's just like a skinnier version of yourself. In fact, maybe even more flabby, right? So from an aesthetic standpoint, it just doesn't look right. Okay, it just doesn't look great. From a metabolism standpoint, has tremendous implications because muscle and some of these other lean tissues, organs, bone, right? They're very metabolically active. So as you lose them, your metabolism starts to slow down. This not only means that it's going to be harder to continue to lose weight, it's going to make weight regain more likely. Okay, so I want to hit that one too. But this idea of losing so much muscle mass as part of this weight loss, that it's just not weight loss, right? We want to talk about quality weight loss. We want to lose fat. Okay, so are there some things that we can do if you are going down the GLP-1 path to maintain muscle mass or even build muscle mass or what have you, to maintain your quality of life, to maintain your strength, to maintain mobility, all these things? We're going to get into that momentarily, okay? But I just wanted to beat that drum really, really loud, that muscle loss is a very real possibility when it comes to these GLP-1s, and it seems to be a significant component of what's being lost, okay? Especially with these larger weight losses. But I mentioned weight regain, okay? So what we see is that 2/3 of what the research shows is that 2/3 of the people that are using GLP-1s regain or excuse me, let me say that differently. GLP-1 users regain 2/3 of the weight that they lose after 1 year of discontinuing. So 2/3 of the weight comes back. And generally speaking, because they've lost muscle mass, because their metabolism is slowed down, what we see is that it's a disproportionate amount of fat mass that's regained. Okay. So they're not regaining the muscle mass, they're regaining fat mass. And so now they're coming back at a higher body fat percentage. This is particularly relevant because what we see is that people, well, before I get into this next statistic, let me say this. The likelihood of weight regain is so strong that one of the studies that I've read, the authors stated that because of the difficulties many people face in maintaining weight loss, lifelong treatment with GLP-1s may be needed. Lifelong treatment. Is that the approach that you want to take? I'm not sure. But I point that out because it's very relevant, because what the research shows is that half of GLP-1 users, particularly those that are using it for weight loss purposes, discontinue after 1 year. Okay. So we have one group of researchers telling us that the likelihood of weight regain is so strong that you need to be using this forever. And then you have this group of people who are just stopping after 1 year, and then a year later they've regained 2/3 of the weight they lost in a disproportionately unhealthy way, right? With more fat mass than lean mass. Okay, so a lot here. Okay, let me take a pause here. Jeff, you said, I would think that weight training and proper hydration, nutrition are vital when losing weight, regardless of the weight loss approach. You hit it, Jeff, and we're going to get into that nutrition approach here in just a moment, because I think that um, the biggest concern, or one of the biggest concerns here, the biggest side effect, is the muscle loss with the GLP-1s. And we know that there's two things that we can do to maintain muscle, right? Or to build muscle. One is resistance training. Okay. So from my standpoint, that you gotta be training, gotta be working out, gotta be lifting weights. Two is going to be nutrition. And in particular, as we're going to get into, protein intake and other nutrients like HMB and creatine, which can help with maintaining muscle. Andrew, you said, would using intermittent fasting and increasing ketones aid in losing more fat and preserving muscle mass with the use of GLP-1? It's a great question, Andrew. The answer right at this point is going to be theoretical, because we don't know, haven't seen that studied for sure. The idea here potentially that ketones can be anti-catabolic or help preserve muscle. It's possible. We're already seeing, a significant energy restriction with the GLP-1s themselves. So I don't know how necessary intermittent fasting would be on top of that. Um, as I'll get into, I think that the strongest lever to pull is adding more protein to your diet, right? And to do that resistance training, those are your two strongest levers. And as I'll get into here in just a moment, ageless muscle. Catherine said, "Is the weight regain due to the muscle loss?" I think that's a big piece of the puzzle, Catherine. Like I mentioned, um, as we lose muscle mass, we're going to get a disproportionate decrease in metabolic rate. So I think that's part of it. I think also that in what we often see with GLP-1s is that maybe people aren't practicing, a healthy lifestyle or implementing a lifestyle intervention that teaches them how to eat properly. And so when those drugs are taken away, again, food preferences come back, appetite control isn't there. And then on top of that, you start eating quote unquote normally or listening to your body again, you have a lower, more sluggish metabolism. I think those two things add together to result in weight regain, and in particular, a disproportionate weight regain. Brenda says, "I did not get accepted to try GLP-1, so I eat plant-based and use BioTRUST products. Lost 50 pounds eating plant-based, fast 14 hours each." Well, Brenda, that's great. Great job on your weight loss. Yeah, absolutely. Everybody give Brenda a round of applause there. Okay. So, Brenda, I hope you're using BioTRUST low carb plant as your protein source then. Or if you aren't eating some dairy, maybe you're using BioTRUST low carb in there as well. But protein is going to be for anyone. I mean, GLP-1 or otherwise, or no GLP-1. If your goal is weight loss, we need to focus on fat loss and maintaining as much muscle mass as possible. Now, I mentioned statistics around GLP-1s and the amount of lean mass that's lost. If we're not consuming enough protein, if we're not using something like ageless muscle, if we're not lifting weights, and we're even eating a healthy diet, then there's still going to be muscle mass lost while you're dieting. Okay, we see that. It's just not to the extent in general that we see from GLP-1s. On average, we see 5 to 10% lean mass lost with dieting. It could be worse, but it's those things can be precluded with the right nutritional support. Awesome, Brenda, good job. Glad you're using the plant-based protein. All right, so let's get into GLP-1 support supplements. I mentioned the gut and digestive issues. So one thing I want to call out real quick is gut reg. Okay, so again, I'm not saying that this is going to solve all your problems, but I think that this could be a very useful. This camera's backwards. A very useful product for someone who might be experiencing something like nausea, heartburn, or even some vomiting related to this, because the main ingredient in gut reg is something called pepsin GI, right? And it's a combination of zinc, which tends to be a nutrient deficiency with GLP-1s, and carnosine. And what we see in the clinical trials is it improves a variety of these digestive related complaints with support for sorry, Joseph. So this is, thank you for letting me know. This is gut reg. Sorry, my camera is going opposite of me. It's like looking backwards. So the gut reg, let me see, turn it this way. Got it? Okay. So gut reg would be one product that I would consider to help with if you have concerns related to the nausea, the other digestive related issues. Excuse me. Okay. Now I want to spend a lot of time talking about the muscle loss now. So there's a few different things that are important here. So like I talked about already, to prevent muscle loss, strength training is the number one most important tool in the toolbox. In addition to that is going to be protein intake. Now I've got some BioTRUST low carb here. I'm going to show you, this is my favorite flavor, chocolate peanut butter. So I'm going to show you that. But BioTRUST low carb, BioTRUST low carb light, and if you're a plant-based eater, BioTRUST low carb plant. These would be foundational for anyone who is using, in my opinion, using a GLP-1. Protein intake is paramount. Optimizing your protein intake. I would go, in this case, when you're in such a drastically reduced caloric intake, Yeah, right here, Jane. When you're on such a drastically reduced caloric intake, I would go with 1 gram per pound of body weight. So the more extreme your diet is, the more extreme your exercise is, the higher, the higher your protein intake. Brenda, I'm glad you clarified here that you're 76 years old. So as we get older, we need even more protein intake. Okay. So as we get older, as we are more extreme with our diet or more extreme with our exercise, we're going to need more protein. So I'm going to draw the line in the sand in this conversation to say that protein intake should be at 1 gram per pound of body weight per day. I suppose that you could do that 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight per day, but that's incredibly important. So protein, particularly we see whey protein and other milk proteins, incredibly important for maintaining building muscle mass. Okay. It's providing the largest concentration. Good question, Paul. Metabo Boost is okay to take with low carb light. Absolutely, no problem there. They work very well together to facilitate, help with weight management, things like that. So low carb light, low carb provides a lot of essential amino acids. Those essential amino acids are critical for rebuilding muscle tissue. So our bodies are constantly breaking down muscle to and remodeling muscle using those amino acids for various purposes in the body. So the only way to rebuild it is, one, you can stimulate it with exercise, and two, to add the amino acids from something like low carb light. Of course, your other high quality foods, things like beef, chicken, other animal, eggs, dairy, all those things provide high quality nutrients. Um, Jeff, can that much protein per day cause any damage to your liver? The short answer is no. Short answer is no. We can get into liver, kidney. For an otherwise healthy person, higher protein intakes are not problematic. If you want, you can look up Stuart. You can search Stuart Phillips, high protein intake kidney in Google. And Dr. Stuart Phillips has written a number of articles on the topic. That it's a circular argument that is not applicable, in short. Okay. So protein intake it's number one thing you can do from a nutritional support standpoint. Like I said, I would do at least 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight when you're on one of these extreme diets or extreme dieting approaches. And in general, if you're trying to lose fat, that will help us maintain muscle mass. Okay. So it's very important to provide those essential amino acids. Andrea, what's the difference between low carb and low carb light? Great question. And what is the best for someone on GLP-1 meds? Very good question. Okay, so the difference between low carb and low carb light is going to come in at 30% fewer calories. It's just whey protein isolate. So it's like your very streamlined protein, very calorie conscious, very efficient source of protein. Low carb is BioTRUST low carb, which is my preference, is actually a combination of whey protein and casein protein. So it's the fast acting whey protein with a slower digesting casein, and it's kind of more of a sustained release. It also mixes up quite a bit thicker, and that's why I like it, whether it's with liquid or with yogurt or anything else. And you can use it in recipes really, really well. So it's my preference. Hey, Erica, good to see you. Never too late for you to join. Always glad to have you here. And so either one is fine, but I would say, Andrea, if you are being particularly calorie conscious, then low carb light would be the way to go, right? It's 100 calories per serving versus 150 and low carb, generally speaking. But either one is perfectly fine. You're actually going to get a little bit more protein out of BioTRUST low carb than low carb light, but you can always add more scoops. So I'd probably look at low carb light, Andrea, as like your entry level. But if you want to, bake with it, or you want to do some other recipes, you want it to mix up a little bit thicker, then low carb is a great option. And again, it's my preference, but either one would be fine. But generally speaking, low carb light seems to be the one that people go with. Okay, so we beat the protein drum. Protein's super duper important. It's providing these essential amino acids that help rebuild muscle, help provide the raw materials to prevent that muscle loss. Another piece of the puzzle, in my opinion, for supporting your muscle mass and to prevent that muscle loss as you're dieting is ageless muscle. Turn it this way, Tim. Okay. Ageless muscle. So 4 ingredients, but the 2 that I want to really highlight are MyHMB and creatine. MyHMB and creatine. We talked, obviously, the name of the product is ageless muscle. And we've talked about it a lot for Goodness gracious. Talks a lot about it for age-related muscle loss. It's also super duper important to help maintain muscle when you're dieting, especially on these extreme diets like we see with GLP-1s. So my HMB is I don't need to get too thick in the weeds, but it's a metabolite of the amino acid leucine. You'd have to eat like 600 grams of protein in order to get the same amount of HMB that you would from ageless muscle. What it does is it works on not only stimulating the body to, produce more muscle, but also helps with the breakdown side of it. It's really, really effective on the breakdown side of it. Probably more effective than anything else that we know of. And so in trials in clinical trials where my HMB is combined with reduced calorie diet, whether it's intermittent fasting or just your typical calorie control diet, we see that HMB prevents the loss in muscle mass that we would see with the diet alone. So it's not only preventing muscle loss, but we actually see not only do we see maintenance of muscle, we actually see increases in muscle mass. So HMB has tremendous, tremendous potential to help maintain muscle mass and possibly even build muscle when we're dieting. So huge, huge, huge there. Okay, so that's a staple there. Now we also have creatine in ageless muscle. Again, creatine, when combined with reduced calorie diet, has muscle preservation effects, and actually we see increases in muscle mass with creatine. Okay, so protein intake, we generally see that protein intake when combined with a reduced calorie diet, so that's low carb light, low carb plant, helps prevent muscle loss, may even help build muscle because it's providing those raw materials. Again, we want to get about 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight or per ideal pound of body weight per day. And then ageless muscle, we see HMB and creatine repetitively and reliably helping maintain muscle or even build muscle when we're dieting for fat loss. So these things are huge insurance policies to prevent that muscle loss that we talked about with GLP-1s, right? We talked about how that muscle loss can not only affect the way that you look, the skinny fat, the Ozempic butt, all that kind of stuff, like make you look, as James said, skeletal, to help you look healthy, right? Look lean, look the way you actually want to look. It can also help you maintain metabolism as you lose weight. And that's tremendously important, again, for preventing that weight regain when you decide to go off of these things. So helping maintain your weight loss, right? So a lot of things here. And not only that, but not accelerating the aging process. We talked about how, you can basically shave off the equivalent of a decade of muscle in 1 year with these things if you're not using them carefully. All right, let's see. Paul says, after losing 30 pounds on low carb light diet. Nice. 3 months okay to continue. To clarify, ideal weight is the weight you want to reach. That is correct. Ideal weight is the weight that you want to reach. Probably the best way to go about the protein intake is 1 gram per pound of lean body mass, if you can measure that. But otherwise, I think that ideal body weight would be fine. 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight. Yeah, Paul, I think that it's perfectly fine to keep on going if it's had some success. If you feel like you need to slow down, take a little break, that's fine too. It's not going to hurt to take a little pause and teach your body how to maintain that new body weight. Okay, so let's not think about weight loss as just being this continued downward trend. It should be going this way, right, on your screen. um, we need to teach our bodies how to maintain at some point. And so, Paul, if it makes sense to like go off for a few weeks and take a little break to see if you can maintain with, some normal, healthy lifestyle behaviors, give it a shot, see what happens. You know that the tool in the toolbox you have is going to work for you if you come back to it. So, part of my encouragement is to test the waters and see if you can maintain your newfound weight loss. Because like we said, weight regain is a real possibility with various weight loss diets. And so learning how to maintain is incredibly important. Christopher, is it true the body naturally recycles protein? This is a good question, Chris. And the truth is there is truth to that statement. Like I mentioned, the body is constantly breaking down muscle. The body doesn't store protein like it stores fat and carbohydrate, right? So you have like this adipose tissue where the body stores fat, and it can break down that fat for energy, or the body can store 400 to 500 grams of carbohydrate as glycogen, whether that's in the muscles or the liver, as stored energy. The body stores protein in very functional ways, right? It's storing it in, it's using protein, the amino acids from the protein that we eat to create hormones, to create enzymes, to create other tissues in the body. Um, but your body's biggest reservoir of these amino acids is your skeletal muscle. And so the body's going to consistently remodel skeletal muscle, break it down. It's in a constant state of breakdown in order to liberate those amino acids for various purposes. And certainly, if the body's not getting enough amino acids from the diet in the form of protein, it's going to have to use more of the amino acids stored in the muscle mass, right? To build bone, to build hormones, to build enzymes, to build immune chemicals, all those things that take precedence over skeletal muscle. And so in that sense, it is recycling what you have, and it's preferentially or going to deprioritize muscle mass over all these other more essential pieces of the puzzle. That's why we see such a significant drop in muscle mass with something like GLP-1s when we're not consuming adequate protein or lifting weights, so on and so forth. Hope that was a great question, Christopher. Hope that helps. Um, Paula said, "What the heck is Ozempic?" But you can probably Google it and find out. But essentially, what that is an issue where someone has lost tremendous amount of muscle mass in their butt as they've lost weight, and so now their pants are falling down. They look like they have a flat butt or whatever. But it's kind of an interesting way of describing. Julie said, "I didn't want to ask," but what it's describing is this skinny fat, where we're actually losing muscle and disproportionately, and looking like skinny and flabby at the same time. So that's kind of what we're talking about with Ozempic. But we also hear about Ozempic face or Ozempic skin, things like that. It's slightly different, where we're losing the elasticity of the skin, but certainly losing fat in various places like the face in that case as well. So let's see. We have another question from Anita. Does the low carb come in a capsule form instead of powder? No, Anita. The low carb protein is only going to come in a powder. We do have an unflavored low carb light, Anita. If you don't like the flavors or the sweeteners or anything like that we're using, and that's an easy point of entry for someone you can add that low carb light unflavored to your coffee or to your water even. That's a good way to do it. But the reason it's in a powder is because it's providing like 20 to 24 grams of protein per serving. That would be a lot of capsules. Like we're talking like 20 capsules or so. So that's not meaningful, or that's not manageable. It's not practical. But in order to be meaningful, we need that much protein. Like I said, we need somewhere in the neighborhood of 1 gram per pound of body weight per day, or ideal body weight per day for the protein. Paul, I hope that answered your question. It's a good question. Let's see. Jane says, ageless muscle tastes good and makes my yogurt a beautiful pink color. That's cool. You add it to your yogurt. That's awesome. Very good, Jane. Let's see. And yep, got it. Thanks, Paul. All right. So I did also want to kind of, I know that I got capped at 45 minutes, but I'm going to go over, I guess, if you want to give me the hack, you can give me the hack. But anyway, so obviously the biggest drum that I was beating there was muscle loss, and why I think that protein intake is so important. Ageless muscle is so important. I talked about gut reg. A couple people have asked about MetaboBoost. So one of the questions that we get is, are there effective alternatives to GLP-1s? There's probably not anything like natural out there that's quite as effective. But I do think that if you're interested in taking a more natural approach, MetaboBoost is a great tool in the toolbox. It does have an impact on appetite, not nearly as strong as like GLP-1s or anything like that, but it can have an appetite management effect. It's also going to influence the other side, the energy burning side of things, the metabolism boosting side of things. But one of the things I want to point out with MetaboBoost is what we see in the clinical trials and in the real world is that after like 8 to 12 weeks of using it, people have lost fat but maintained muscle. Okay, so we actually see muscle preservation benefits with MetaboBoost. And so if you're using GLP-1s, maybe it has that additional benefit of helping maintain muscle. I also want to point out that there may be some synergy between Metabo Boost and GLP-1s because, like I pointed out, GLP-1s are going to influence this side of the energy balance equation where they're reducing food intake, really focused on appetite suppression. Metabo Boost, while it has a little bit of that effect, works very strongly. It's designed to work very strongly on the other side where it's increasing metabolic rate. So the two together, they might make a nice little couple. And I like them because I like Metabo Boost because of the muscle preservation effects that we see working through different mechanisms than protein. Okay. And Coach Christina, thank you for mentioning also the ageless multi collagen. I haven't really talked about that one too much, but I do think it's an important supplement. So it's going to provide protein. Ageless multi collagen is going to provide protein. Collagen protein is different than whey protein. The amino acid makeup is very different. Plus, the peptides in collagen actually are doing more than just providing amino acids. They're actually telling the body to produce more collagen. This is important when it comes back to something like the Ozempic face. Okay, so it was something I was going to bring up, but ageless collagen. This is vanilla. This would be my favorite flavor of the ageless multi collagen. But I think that ageless multi collagen is also an important tool in the toolbox because when we're not providing enough of the essential building blocks through our diet, like we're seeing with GLP-1s, we need to get that nutritional support. We definitely see like loose skin, skin related issues, again, Ozempic face, things like that. I think that collagen may play an important role in and helping with supporting the skin health, supporting collagen production, things like that when we're using the GLP-1s. Okay. So protein, 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 ageless muscle, you guys, you just can't get enough of it. All right. Jeff says, I combine strawberry banana low carb with Eternal Reds, Keto Elevate, one large container mixed well. Nice. Have that 2 to 3 times a day. Delicious and nutritious, I should mention, Jeff. That's great. I started to get into effective alternatives. So I mentioned the Metabo Boost as either complementary or standalone. Again, it's not going to produce, I wouldn't expect Metabo Boost to produce the same kind of results that you get from GLP-1s because it's not a drug, right? It's not a drug. It's a dietary supplement. But it is going to be very supportive of weight management goals. And I think that it can be very beneficial in terms of boosting metabolism and fat burning, but also with preserving muscle mass. And actually, we see in studies on the main ingredient in Metabo Boost, we see that people can actually maintain their weight loss once they stop. So it's very important. We see they maintain. So a couple things. Okay. So not only do they maintain their weight loss, but they also maintain their metabolism. In fact, after 12 or 16 weeks of taking Sinatrol, the main ingredient in Metabo Boost, folks' metabolism is actually higher than when they started. That's huge, right? Because we talked about with GLP-1s, for example, we expect to see this metabolic decline as a result of the loss in muscle mass and the significant decrease in food intake. And that actually contributes to the weight regain. So with Metabo Boost, we actually see, if not a preservation of metabolic rate, an increase in metabolic rate over time with its use. So it's something to consider there. Now, if you go search for like natural GLP-1 boosters, you're going to find a lot of stuff out there. I have yet to find anything that is super compelling to me. Very few things out there have actual data on them showing that they increase GLP-1 or that they actually lead to meaningful weight loss, right? At the end of the day, the mechanism behind GLP-1 is really, in terms of weight loss, is appetite related, satiety related, things like that. So that's important. But at the end of the day, when people are using GLP-1s, what they want is weight loss. At least there's this category of people, what they're looking for is weight loss. So mechanistically, even if there's this circuitous route to increasing GLP-1, if your product is not leading to meaningful weight loss, it doesn't really matter, right? So what we see out there right now in terms of products are some pretty cool products, I'm not going to lie, that have things like prebiotics or probiotics that influence the production of short chain fatty acids like butyrate or propionate, which can trigger the body's production of GLP-1 or probiotics that maybe increase the production or increase levels of Akkermansia, which is an amazing probiotic, by the way, for various reasons. And Akkermansia, one of the things it does is it's in the body can lead to the production of propionate, which then triggers the production of GLP-1. What I'm getting at here is that a lot of the products out there that claim to be GLP-1 boosters is transitive property at best. A equals B, B equals C, so A equals C. It's a nice story, but I'm not sure that it amounts to it. It certainly doesn't seem like it amounts to the effects of a GLP-1 drug. Now, those products may have other benefits. Increasing GLP, or excuse me, increasing Akkermansia has a number of different benefits, or having prebiotic fibers and things like that in your diet is important. But do they, mount to boosting GLP-1 and, even more importantly, support your weight loss goals? I'm not sure. Now, having said that, we've spent a lot of time at BioTRUST looking into various plants and different compounds that can actually increase GLP-1 and, more relevant to most people concerned, actually produce meaningful weight loss. And we found some things that actually can do that. And that is in the works for us, and it's something that we have in store for you later this year, maybe the beginning of next year. But that is something that would be like naturally supporting your body's GLP-1 production and supporting your weight loss efforts. It will work very well with something like MetaboBoost. Will it be in Ozempic or Wegovy or any of these GLP-1 receptor agonists? I don't think it will compare, because we're not talking about a drug here, but we're talking about dietary supplements that can actually do what they say they're supposed to do. Okay, so keep an eye out for that. Let's see. Paula says, I've been using IC5 for many years. I love IC5, Paula, and find it's great for helping lose weight. It also works well when you eat more carbs than you want. I have it twice a day. Paula, thanks for plugging IC5. It's a great supplement. It's one of my favorites also. It actually has an ingredient called berberine in IC5. There was a while there where people were referring to berberine as nature's Ozempic. I'm not sure that that's the case, but berberine is very effective. Very effective at blood sugar, helping with blood sugar management, also with different cardiovascular metrics. And it has been shown to help with weight loss in a variety of ways. So Paula, thanks for plugging IC5. That's yeah, Jane, that's, you said it, not me. It's been compared to that and been shown to be quite helpful there. So you know what you're talking about. Let's see. Anita, is there one best product to help transition off GLP-1? That's a good question, Anita. Paul, does BioTRUST sell IC5? Yes, we do for sure. In fact, I didn't fall down, but it looks like this. And just so you know, guys, that IC5 will have a name change here pretty soon called Carb Command, but for now, you can still find it as IC5. It's the same formula, new name. Okay. Anita says, is there one best product to help transition off GLP-1? That my answer would be, it depends, Anita. There's a lot of things that would depend on, the amount of weight loss that you had, the change in body composition, what your diet looked like, things like that. If I had to choose some things from the BioTRUST toolbox, you're saying one best product, I'm gonna probably give you a few. I would certainly make sure that your protein intake is in the right spot. Again, that's 1 gram per pound of body weight or so per day. And that would be, with the help of BioTRUST low carb or low carb light. I love Ageless Muscle for many, many reasons. I think that, MetaboBoost is probably going to be a useful tool in the toolbox here as well, because we might need a little help cajoling the metabolism to get back to where we want it, as well as have a little bit of appetite. So that would be my suggestion, Anita, is MetaboBoost. Again, it's not on the same wavelength or the same. It's not a drug, right? So it may not have the same effect, but I think from a transitionary perspective, it's probably going to be a pretty useful tool. All right, guys, we covered a lot of ground here. It's been almost an hour. You guys asked some great questions. This was an extremely awesome audience, very interactive. I didn't see any trolls today. Maybe Coach Cristina weeded them out first. There's usually someone who's trying to distract me, but everybody did a good job, behaved themselves. I appreciate you. Hey, Ryan, thank you. Pig Winter says, oh, you knew zero about GLP-1. Thank you. Thank you for that. Dre, you're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all the support. Thanks, Paula. Appreciate you guys. Coach Cristina, shout out to you, bud. You crushed it. You're always there. Partner in crime. You're super helpful. You're the best. Wouldn't be able to do it without you. Thanks to the entire team for all the support. Thank you guys for being here. Oh, Dawn from Aggieland. We'll see it. We'll see you around Thanksgiving. All right. We'll see what happens. We're back on the schedule this year. Okay. All right. Jane, appreciate you guys. Sandy, you guys are the best. And let us know if you have any questions. I think you can always reach us at coaches@biotrust.com if you have any additional questions. We'll do it again soon. Hope it's helpful. Andrea, absolutely. And guys, if you have more questions, you want to go back and watch this, we're going to post it. We'll post it up, and you guys can come back to it. So thank you so much. Hope you got some good information out of this. If you didn't get anything else, make sure you get your protein and your ageless muscle. Okay? That's where it's at. All right, guys. Take care. Thank you again for your support and for behaving yourselves. Appreciate you.